Your home for our Atlanta Falcons, Hawks, and Atlanta United. Your teams play here. Sports Radio 92.9, The Game.
We are Dukes and Bell. We start off every day and every hour by saying, hey, man. Go get some Hey Man Ale. Get some watermelon lime in your life, guys, at any local package store and, of course, at all the Publix around the state of Georgia. There's a lot going on today. We're going to talk about Dansby being back in a Cubs uniform. I'm seeing a lot of love over at Truist Park where he's greeting his former teammates. He's got a lot of respect, guys, in that clubhouse. A lot of respect. Right. And you're seeing it by the way guys are greeting him. This is a homecoming of sorts for him because he's from here, played here, won a World Series here. We'll get into it coming up in about 10 minutes. We'll also talk to Grant McCauley coming up at 5:40. Mike, let's talk Falcons because tomorrow we're up at Flowery Branch. We'll talk to Coach Art. These guys will get on a plane and take a long plane ride overseas and play in London Sunday morning. We get up, we get some early football. So, you know, if you're eating breakfast, having your coffee, whatever you're doing Sunday morning, we're going to get a chance to see the Falcons. And hopefully, Mike, this team responds to a terrible and poor performance on Sunday.
Yeah, and it's one thing for me. We'll talk to Arthur Smith, as you mentioned, tomorrow. As an offensive lineman, to see his offensive line just completely just abused by what the Lions were doing. After a bunch of injuries, too. Talked about it earlier. I mean, Brian Branch, we joked about who's Brian Branch. He was an Alabama safety that was third on the Tide in tackles, and he was a one-man gang and a first-round draft pick. Remember, they had a bunch of first-round picks in last year's draft, but he was a guy that was all over the place. Hutchinson did eventually get there, you know, and get a sack. But, man, when you've got 7 sacks, and not to mention how many hurries, how much of this, when he gets to the film, and we'll talk to Arthur, you got to tell Ritter, ball's got to be out.
Pull!
I mean, I know there's longer developing plays and routes, but you've got to have that inner clock to get rid of the ball. And then, Arthur, did he do enough? And we'll ask him, I guess the question, put in his own words, do you feel you did enough to help him and pivot when the game plan kind of showed where it was going?
Let's talk to the voice of our Atlanta Falcons and see what he thinks. Wes Durham joins us here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. And, Wes, how do you feel about that when it comes to this offense? I think it's something all Falcon fans are talking about. There have been glimpses, right? We saw in week 1 and 2, and you go, okay, if we can be that, this is going to be really good. And then last week, it seems like we couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I think there's always, you take a step forward, and at some point you kind of expect a step sideways. You got to step back, I think, in the regard of what the offense was doing. The defense got put in some tough spots as a result of that, but at the same time, I think that, you got to live and learn from this thing. It's a long season. You can't write the book after 3. Right. And in Atlanta's case, guys, to be honest with you, you've seen a small sample size. You like what you see, but when you get frustrated like you did Sunday, now all of a sudden you want to see, okay, well, how does this group respond? And I think that's going to be a big part of what happens at Wembley on Sunday is the response. And they'll add to the news, I guess, of the last hour on Troy Anderson.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're looking at a personnel scenario playing out. We'll find out, what the answers are there and how that works. And Coach Smith indicated yesterday he feared this might be bad, and it is bad. So now all of a sudden, Nate Landman, Tay Davis, how does that work from Atlanta's particular situation? Is there another answer to it that maybe we're not aware of? We'll just see what happens Sunday, and you're going to play a team that was pretty well wounded. Now, remember, the crowd you're playing on Sunday is 1-2, and they were the favorites to win the AFC South when the year started, right? It was a Jacksonville-Tennessee discussion, Tennessee-Jacksonville discussion. Didn't have anything to do with Houston, didn't have anything to do with Indianapolis. And they've lost to Kansas City close and got blasted last week by the Texans in a game that featured a fullback scoring on a kickoff return. So, I mean, we got plenty to handle on Sunday. And, oh, by the way, we're going 5 hours away. So 5 time zones away, I guess. So we'll see how it plays out for sure.
Yeah, and the thing was, I can accept some teams are a second-half team, but, I mean, we got all these weapons. That's something we've got to find a way to kickstart this offense early. And even another example of just the futility on Sunday, Jesse Bates has just been a one-man gang. Got his 3rd pick. You flip the field, and there's still enough time. At that time, there's about 17, 18 minutes left in the game. And we just go 3. I mean, we couldn't do anything off that interception with great field position.
Well, and give those guys credit, too, because they had been gashed a little bit the week before by Seattle, right? And they responded to the adversity they had faced the previous Sunday. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, Mike. Can Atlanta respond to their adversity? And can they do it against a group who, like Atlanta, is probably paying off some of their own? I mean, Trevor Lawrence apologizes to the media after the game. Wasn't happy with the way he played. I think Desmond did likewise in Atlanta. But, when you're Trevor Lawrence and you're in year 3, there's a little bit different type message behind it. So, that's what the stakes are Sunday. And I think it's really interesting because, I still, Mike, you and Carl have heard me talk about those first 6 games out of the gate, right? And can Atlanta come out of that, in my world, 4-2? But can they come out of that with an understanding of who they are really in all 3 phases and kind of where will they be going when you get to Game 7? And Game 7 is in Tampa. It's your next division game. That was the reason I looked at those first 6. And I think Atlanta's still got a lot to write about in the next 3 ball games after what they've learned through the first 3.
Wes, I know you're always looking ahead and doing your prep. Tell me what we should know about Jacksonville. We obviously know about, Trevor Lawrence. We know about Ridley. But what do you see? And it seems like, they stubbed their toe last week. I mean, it happens in the NFL. They should have probably beat the Texans. Texans outplayed them. So now they're looking to get right.
Texans were missing 8 starters too, Carl.
It's crazy. The way they played, it was almost like, they thought they were just going to show up at the stadium. So we know they'll be motivated against us in London. But what do you see with Jacksonville?
Well, I think you got to look, first of all, at who they are and what Press Taylor and Doug Peterson have tried to do offensively. And that's where Calvin Ridley has become a thing. I mean, 13 catches, averaging well over 10 a catch and a touchdown. They played without Zay Jones last week. I think the next guy you got to worry about in my area is Christian Kirk, who I think has always been a pretty good player.
Yep.
But with Ridley there, he can become much more impactful. Evan Ingram, to me, is kind of going to steal your lunch money at times if you're not careful. And I think he's the guy that you have to look at and say, okay, where's Evan Ingram going to be? How do we account for him? And I'll go back to the Anderson injury for Atlanta because Evan Ingram has to have somebody who's paying attention to him. And then they're going to run it with Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. You could see a couple of other guys, but the reality of it is that's their run game. And Lawrence has got to make good decisions. I thought in watching a little bit of the game from Sunday, he maybe did not make great decisions. But Trevor, I'm not sure what he was seeing or what Houston was doing. And then, in all honesty, I think defensively these guys are pretty good. I think you've got a bunch of no-names up front, but you got Aluakan, you got Trayvon Walker, and you got Josh Allen at the linebacking spot, right? Shaq Quarterman's on this roster. Their secondary, I think, is – guys that aren't particularly well known but are impactful guys. I had a lot of Andre Sisco's games when he was in school at Syracuse. He's terrific at safety. Had a pick the other day. I believe Rayshon Jenkins at Miami is a 7th-year guy. You got guys that are 7th year, 3rd year, and 6th year, and Darius Williams playing corner. So they're going to be a good football team, and you're going to have to play well to win. But, again, I'll go back to the fact that both teams are coming off of probably a bitter pill last Sunday.
It is Wes Durham. Yes, he's heading to jolly old England with Arch and Squidbilly in his Louis Vuitton travel bag. Joins us here on the WadeFord.com hotline. Wes, we know we're a run team. We're the 4th worst team throwing the football right now through 3 weeks. And I got to be honest, despite what we want to see from Pitts and Drake London, you got to come out and run the football. Even the Lions were surprised how much we tried to throw it on that first series.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if there was a plan in place how it was going to work if you start having success. What were they looking for from Detroit, right? That the throw game they thought would be there, because nobody just comes up and says, okay, we're going to throw it 6 times just to throw it 6 times. Right. There's a reason, right? And so without having a lot of success in that early stuff, what did that do to alter maybe steps 2 and 3 and what you were planning? So, but I imagine the plan may be entirely different on Sunday depending on what Jacksonville's done in the past. And the league is a little copycat, as everybody talks about, but it's also contingent, I think, at times on formations. And how does Jacksonville line up, say, on against 12 personnel, as opposed to the way maybe Detroit lined up against 12 personnel? I think teams show their hand a little bit in the first 3 weeks, and certainly now you've got at least somewhat of a tendency on those type things as well.
We're talking with our man, Wes Durham, the voice of our Atlanta Falcons. Falcons turning the page here and trying to get ready as they will. Short week, guys, because the trip over there, cut your week, and they'll get over there and practice and whatnot. as they'll head over to London to take on Jacksonville. Let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about the defense.
Okay.
I thought the defense kept us in the game and did more than enough, right? And if you ask me anything about this team right now, Wes, I've been finding myself, around the country saying I'm more surprised at how well this defense has come together in 3 weeks and how well Jesse Bates is playing than anything. Like that to me is something that I guess I didn't expect with all these new pieces and the money that was spent and how long that might take to come together. It's come together pretty well.
Yeah, I think so. I think Bates has proven to be the playmaker. I think he's also proven to be the leader in the back end of this thing, right? It's interesting. Seemingly some of the stuff that was chaotic at times last year on defense is not chaotic anymore.
Right.
Even with some of those same guys there. And I'm beginning to believe that's the influence of number 3 for sure. But I think the question now, and I'm going to try and put this Anderson thing on the shelf here a little bit because I feel awful for the kid. But as a core unit, I think we're starting to see the impact that Onyemata can have, what he can do to help Grady. Calais Campbell and kind of the situations they're using him and Zach Harrison, who had 4 tackles last week, right, Carl?
Yes.
The names that I'm not calling as much are maybe like Lorenzo Carter, Arnold Ebiketie, although Ebiketie, he's got 4 tackles. He had 1 last week. Bud Dupree, I'm noticing a lot more in gameplay, right? So I think there is an acclimation point, and the defense is better. I think you're right about that. The numbers kind of reflect that. I like the fact they're 10th in the league on third down, to be honest. Because I remember last year in the deep 20s, Coach.
Right.
The number is 32.4, and I remember the number being like 42.4. So, I'm encouraged by that side of it for sure. And I really like, for the most part during the game, I like the temperament with Ryan Nielsen's play calling too. Would you like to see the heat turned up a lot more? Sure. Everybody in the league would love to bring 5 or 6 on every snap and play man behind it. Right. Just not possible. But I do believe that it is a building defense, and I think we're starting to see some of that through the first 3. And despite the loss the other day, they still forced a turnover. They did some things that I think if we can say, okay, you know what, they might get us 1 every game. They might get us 2 and a couple more. If that's the case, then I think those are all stats and qualities we can live with.
I'm with you. I mean, Wes, we get them off the field. They're 4th best pass defense right now in the NFL, top 10 in scoring as far as points allowed, and they're a second half team defensively too. That's what we saw. That's how we won that beat the Packers, right? Forcing those 3 and outs.
Yeah, no question. I think Mike, all that is in play here. And here's the other part too. Even off a tough loss like last Sunday, you sound a lot happier than you do sometimes when we lose.
No, I did a whole video today telling Falcon fans to stop with the fatalism. It's only 3 weeks. I figured we may go 500 to the first 4 games anyway, and maybe 3-1's gravy. We beat Jacksonville, but the outlier that has everybody so upset is you're beginning to worry about Ritter, and is Ritter going to be able to get the playmakers? I don't care how we get there, style points, but the fans are going to say, why do we draft Rake? Why do we draft Pitts if you guys can't even get these guys the ball?
Wait a second. All right, now let's go back to what, Carl, remember the 68 to 73 conversation to now the 63 to 68 conversation? Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Mike, we were 13 years around here with a guy that was like 68 to 73 every game, right?
Right.
Okay. We're 7 games into a guy who might be on aggregate 5 points less.
Right.
But he also offers you other things. So I know he missed some throws. I'm not saying he's not without cause on this. I understand that. But this is what I meant. I mean, I remember back in 2008, Matt Ryan lit up Detroit. Michael Turner ran for 6 miles in the 08 opener, went to Tampa the next week, and Ryan was like 11 of 38, and people were like, he can't play. So now we're 3 games in, 7 total in Dez's career. I still think he's got the right wiring mentality to win. I think he knows how to win. I think he did it at college for sure. He did it in high school, and I think he can win here. Some games are not going to be high-end throwing games, but some are. And Sunday was just one swing of the tough end of this. And I think, let's be honest, whenever this happens, it's got something to do with those guys up front too. And that's the piece that of Ritter's performance, how much of it was forced by the fact Detroit was getting to the quarterback around the offensive line? How much of it was him? How much of it was a collaborative effort on the front, too? And I think that's the questions we got to get answered. And I think Coach Smith can probably, bring some of that to light with you guys tomorrow for sure.
Let's hope so. Wes, great job. Enjoy your time in London. And we'll be listening right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Thank you so much.
I always sound better with coffee in the morning, Carl. I don't probably, you get an early cup of coffee by 9:30. I typically sound really good with coffee in the morning. So
Can't wait.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it.
Tea this weekend.
It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. I like these early games, by the way. I like getting up and seeing football.
You and I are actually hitting the road. Got a flight, so it actually works out for us to catch this game early in the day.